Hello there. Welcome to this presentation. Today we're going to take a little while to explore a really important topic that every business person, rather everybody actually, should be mindful of. We're going to discuss oversharing. And, what is the right amount of personal or client information to share when it comes to your business communications, client work, etc. Okay, let's jump into it. In case you don't know me from a hole in the wall, I'm Suze. Hi. And I run the one-woman show over here at Suzanne Britt Consulting and SB Success Factor. So business communications, information and knowledge management, operations management, and project and program management, those are all my jam. I help small business folks like you with their communications and content needs. And if you want to learn more about how I can support you in your business, don't hesitate to reach out. There's some contact details and a free resource waiting for you at the end of this presentation. And I swear, this is the only time that you're going to have to look at this giant cameo of me. Get a good look. Okay, on to our juicy topic. Are you ready? I hope so. Here are a couple definitions of oversharing for you to ponder. I think the dictionary definitions are a decent starting place for discussion. But I want us to explore oversharing in the context of our businesses, content, and so on. It's really important to understand that oversharing is not just one homogeneous, monolithic thing. It's not a black and white concept. It's a continuum with shades of gray. It's very contextual, depending on your audience, your purpose, etc. It's subjective and can vary from person to person. It's shifty and can morph over time and space. It's usually qualitative, not quantitative. It's more about how it feels or seems rather than any hard numbers. Suffice it to say, it's pretty damn nuanced. Several factors come into play, and they can really have you teetering on the too much, too little seesaw. But you'll eventually develop your own definition of oversharing that fits you and your needs. We'll take a look at different aspects of oversharing today, and I'll offer some suggestions for things to consider and do for each aspect. But first, why do we share anything in the first place? What's the point of it all? Well, we share information and pieces of ourselves for a whole host of reasons, and our why may change based on circumstance or over time, etc. On the slide are just some of the reasons that we share. Some are a bit more qualitative, while others may be more transactional. But ultimately, you're trying to use the sharing to get from point A to point B in a conversation or exchange you're having. You're trying to bring about a transformation of some kind, like the transfer of knowledge or compelling someone to take a certain action. Plus, we're humans. Humans are highly social creatures. We are programmed to share. The issue is when you step over that really fuzzy line from sharing to oversharing. We'll get into what oversharing could look like and why it's potentially bad momentarily. But first, let me ask you this. If oversharing is such a bummer, why is it so rampant? Well, this can be a tough, complicated nut to crack, and I don't believe there's one universal answer. I think there are infinite reasons why we can stumble or throw ourselves headfirst into oversharing. We're trying to convey something in a certain way, perhaps, or think that revealing more will lead to some desired outcome, that it'll magnetically attract people and positive outcomes to us, or that it'll compel the forces of the universe to bend our way. And there are definitely cultural and generational differences and comfort zones layered on top. For example, if you grew up in a time and place where there's always been the internet and social media, chances are your perceptions of things like online behavior norms and privacy are not the same as someone who was raised in a different era or environment. And yes, some degree of sharing is absolutely necessary. That's called communicating, and we must do this every day in business and life, or nothing would get accomplished. We'd all be lonelier and worse off. We just need to be careful and cognizant of oversharing. You need to draw your line in the sand and then stand behind it. There's this idea of oversharing as in fire hosing your audience with too much content, like emailing them too often or including too much factual detail in your messages or having way too many bonuses, inclusions, or links at once. It's a scenario where you're overwhelming and burdening them with an excess of information or content that they just simply can't handle. We're not talking about that flavor of oversharing right now. What we're focusing on is the kind of oversharing that relates to extreme or excessive dishing out of personal details or private information. And as we touched on before, extreme or excessive is determined by you and your audience. Now, I've got some examples listed here that you can take a look at, and we'll come back to these in a second. But I just wanted to help you picture what oversharing could be or how it could manifest itself in the wild so that you recognize it. At this point, you may be thinking, okay, I get it, but why does this matter so much? Why does this chick think it's important enough to do a whole presentation on? Like, what's the big deal? I hear you. And I think you'll see that oversharing has the potential to be a two-sided issue that can create real problems for both you and your audience. Now, for your audience, it can lead to overwhelm or overlooked information. All that stuff you're oversharing is creating more work or requiring more effort for your audience. And the salient information may get lost or ignored or go unnoticed in the process of them trying to consume your content. It can waste your audience's time and attention. And we know how short people's attention spans are these days and that there's a lot of competition for it. Oversharing certain things may be offensive to some, and that might not be a line that you want to toe. It can also trigger biases or trauma and lead to counterproductive responses. We really never know what unintended consequences can come from oversharing. And if you do client work, you have to be careful not to overshare their information. Info like proprietary data, intellectual property, and so on. This is especially critical if there are NDAs or other contractual parameters in place. You don't want to put yourself in legal hot water. And you don't want to sully your reputation. You also don't want to lose business, referrals, or affiliates or other people that might be helpful business partners. And there's a potential blowback from oversharing for you too, as the sharer. If oversharing means that you're having to create more content, you could be less efficient and burn yourself out. It could take an emotional toll on you and help you feeling energetically drained, or you could be opening yourself up to unnecessary risk as well. Overall, you want your communication experiences to feel good and be manageable for everyone. You want everyone to get out of the exchange what they want and need so that your sharing has been effective and efficient. Before we move on to my tips for you, I want to take an extra moment on this risk, safety, security, privacy thing because it's so important. And for a long time, literally almost nobody was talking about it. Thankfully, I've started seeing more chatter and messages of caution recently, so hopefully people's awareness is beginning to grow. You have to understand that once you release information into the universe, it's out there. It's not a puppy you can coax back into a kennel with some treats. And once it's out there, you no longer have control over that information. Anyone can take it and manipulate it and misuse it if they wish to, and not to fearmonger, but unfortunately, some people wish to. I think some examples can really help drive this home. And know that I'm not a tech, legal, or risk management professional, so these are just for illustrative purposes. If you have specific concerns, you should definitely seek out the advice of a specialized pro. Okay, with that disclaimer out of the way, imagine these hypothetical situations. Jane has a client that we'll call ABC Company, and she wants AI help with client work. So she asks ChatGPT to take some information that she feeds it and generate a first draft of a blog post for this client. Well, did she include the company's name in her prompts and maybe some confidential tidbits? Did she turn off the history feature and opt out of being included in OpenAI's training data set first? Does she really know that the blog post she's creating is going to be protected by 𝐉𝐈𝐶𝐃𝐄𝐎's copyright when it's posted? And if it is some version of that copyrighted material now part of ChatGPT's pool of information it draws from? Has Jane opened herself up to legal issues or violated any agreements with her client by using this tool in this way? To frame it up, much of AI and tech in general is still kind of the Wild West meets the Wizard of Oz. It's every person for themselves, and no one really knows what's going on behind the green curtain. Moreover, usage agreements for software change over time. You may have seen some of the hullabaloo regarding the EULAs for Reddit and YouTube recently that changed what these companies are allowed to do with the data and content you have on their platforms. And selling user data is also something that's not new. And you may have heard the saying, nothing's free, and if it's free, you're the product. It's that sort of thing. Another kind of example for you, and I see this all the time. People talking about their personal lives. For example, Gloria sharing that her mom just had emergency surgery, or John boasting that his child just won first place at the track meet, complete with the medal-bearing kiddo pic to prove it, of course. Or it's Lynn's birthday on Tuesday, and because they're turning 60, you get 60% off everything in their shop. Or you're heading to Bora Bora for the next 2 weeks on your dream vacation, and you're totally psyched. Look, I get it. We are real people with real lives, and sharing some personal things is fun, interesting, connection building. It can help keep your work from feeling like the dreaded job. The problem is that this stuff, your birth date, where and when you're going to be out of town, that you have certain health conditions, etc., can be fodder for bad actors. This is information that can be used to help hackers, scammers, and other evil doers target you and your family. I don't mean to stoke fear, but I've seen it happen personally, and I would hate to think that we aren't all doing what we can to ward off problems. Also, are you sure that your mom, your spouse, your kid, whoever, want their intimate business broadcast out to strangers? That's really something to think about as well. Okay, now on to the good stuff. Yay! I think the key here is to find your perfect balance. What suits you and your personality and your needs, as well as those of your audience. Fortunately, you're in control of what you share out into the world. You have agency, which means that the ability to share appropriately is largely in your hands. So I want you to pretend for a moment that He-Man and Goldilocks had a love child. Now channel that energy, because you have the power and you know what's just right. To do this, here are some things you can try, and hopefully they'll help you achieve that balance. Test them out, adjust, see what passes your personal smell test, and go from there. First, know your why and desired outcomes. Only share stuff that serves your intended purpose and the actions you want your audience to take. Define your boundaries. Figure out what feels good to you and what makes sense for different contexts, and then respect the size and shape of those guardrails you've established. Know your audience's needs, preferences, and motivation. Tailor what you're sharing to meet them where they're at and where they want to go. You can also play around with audience segmentation, only sharing select stuff with subsets of your people with whom it'll truly resonate. But basically, there's a sort of social contract here that you should strive to respect so that they feel comfortable with what you're sharing too. I mean, yes, of course, they can just unsubscribe or whatever, but theoretically, you want to have them stick around for a long time and foster a productive and constructive relationship with them. Now, thoughtfulness can also go a really long way. If you step into your audience's shoes, is what you're thinking about sharing appropriate, relevant, timely, comfortable, etc.? You can really fill that blank in and see what you think. When you're mindful, you'll likely also only share what feels okay for you too. It's a practice that can help prevent mistakes or sharing something that you later regret. There's a saying, sharing is caring, but maybe it should be considerate sharing is really caring. Next, try being consistent. This may help. Consistency sets expectations, and if your audience is used to getting certain kinds or styles of information or content from you, more sensitive shares may not seem weird or like, TMI. Also, don't forget that your actions and words have consequences. There's this whole cause and effect thing, a tit for tat, yin and yang, and so forth. Before you speak or hit send or press the button to publish, think about what might happen as a result of what you're sharing. Without making yourself crazy or paranoid or obsessive, try to anticipate likely outcomes or responses. you may decide that sharing doesn't shake out in this quick cost-benefit check. I also encourage you to embrace experimentation and change. Really just test different formats and styles and amounts of what you're sharing to see what really hits the mark and in which context. You'll probably see evidence of what's working through the response of your audience and in various metrics over time. Do more of what's working, adjust your course as needed, and be sure to reevaluate your approach periodically because needs and norms shift over time. So to recap or kind of bubble up best practices, here are some overarching takeaways you might consider when thinking about sharing information or content. First, understand that there are trade-offs. Cost versus benefit, different factors at play, how pulling on one lever impacts others. And the impacts are not just for your audience, but for you as a person running your business and living your life as well. And if you're sharing family stuff, they are also involved and affected, and that's worth bearing in mind. Remember that you're not operating in a vacuum. There is a lot in this oversharing equation that you do have control over, but you don't always have control over everything. You don't always call all the shots. I know that's a total shocker, but it's true. If you're using tech, be sure you understand your rights and the tech company's permissions and privileges, and stay within the lines of any laws or regulations like GDPR and HIPAA and relevant best practices for your industry or niche. Adjust your approach. Based on your business, your audience, or other informational or promotional considerations and constraints, you might have to tweak things, and that's okay. Don't be afraid to try new things and see what's effective and efficient and really feels good. Now, all this said, focus on trying to be sensible and sustainable. You want to set yourself up for success and joy. Do more of what nurtures and cultivates positivity and feeling energized. Ditch what drags you down or wipes you out. Consider your short, medium, and long-term goals and share whatever kind of info at whatever level of detail will help you satisfy those needs while protecting yourself as you need to. If you stay true to yourself with an eye on the world around you and its influences, you can find the right balance. You won't overshare or undershare. What and how you share will hopefully feel natural to both you and your audience, and you'll safeguard your well-being to the extent possible in today's hyper-connected digital landscape. It's really a win-win-win. It's a win for everybody, and that is a great thing. Well, that brings us to the end of our presentation and time together today. Thanks so much for being here. I hope you learned something new and helpful. Feel free to reach out with any questions. And, before we part ways today, I invite you to stay in touch. The best way to do that is to scoot on over to my website and grab one of the free resources there. I've got one pictured here that you might find really useful. And when you snag your freebie, you'll be added to my email distribution, which will keep you in the loop. I usually share a weekly newsletter with tips, explainers, roundups of events and resources, that kind of thing. And I promise you will not catch me oversharing. But I still try to make things fun and interesting for you and me both. Anyway, that's it for here and now, and I hope you have an amazing rest of the day. Bye!